Hello and good morning, everyone. Today we're going to start solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula, but we're going to have decimals as our answers. Okay, so let's get started and talk about the quadratic formula. Okay, so we start with our standard. Okay, now this right here, remember, is standard form. So our ax squared plus bx plus c. And very importantly, before I can go to the quadratic formula, just like we have with a lot of other solving equations, quadratics, one side of the equation has to be 0. Okay? Now, when this happens, we're going to be only interested in the a, the sign with b, and the sign with c. Okay? We're not interested in the variables. We could care less about those. So what's going to happen is we're going to substitute those values in for the b's go with the b's. Okay. The a goes with a. And this a. Forgot the a down here. And then the c goes down here. Okay, so our quadratic equation, quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Okay. So that's the formula you're going to need to have, you're going to need to know. There you go. Okay. You're welcome. Okay. So let's get started. Let's take a look at several examples so you can see how this equation is going to work. All right. So here we go. Let's start with the first one. I give you x squared minus 2x minus 3 equaling 0. So one of the first things we have to worry about is, does one side of this equation equal to 0? And the answer is yes, so I'm all set. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to label up my a's, b's, and c's. So the number in front of x squared is 1. Since I can't see it, that is going to be a. Okay. The number in front of regular x, that is b. So in this case, b is going to be negative 2. And my c value is going to be negative 3. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our quadratic formula here. We're going to substitute in, and we're going to start solving it out. Okay, so you're going to need your calculator for this. So if you don't have your calculator next to you, please pause the video, go get your calculator, and come back, because you are going to need your calculator for this video. Okay, so let's get going. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start substituting. Okay, so here we go. X equals negative b. Now my b value is negative 2. But the quadratic formula says b's got to be negative. We change the sign up. That's what the negative in front here means. So if I'm taking a negative 2, that's really just positive 2. Okay? Plus or minus radical. Now b squared, we're going to take negative 2 and square it. Okay, minus 4, and again, that's standard, that never changes in this equation, times my a value, which is 1, times my c value of negative 3, and that's all going to be divided by 2 and my a value, which is 1. Okay, so we have this. So there's our substitution of our a's, b's, and c's. Now our next step is we're going to start working under the radical a little bit here. So x equals the 2 plus or minus radical. Now negative 2 squared is going to be positive 4, because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Minus 4. Oops. Well, let me erase that, because we're going to do the work in here. Okay, so now here's where you got to be extra cautious. We're going to take this negative 4, times it by 1, and get our answer, which is negative 4. Then we're going to take that answer and times that by negative 3, and we get positive 12. So this turns to plus 12, all divided by, now we do our 2 times 1, which is just 2. Now again, I stress with the quadratic formula, folks, if you are going to screw it up, it's going to be right here. Okay? A lot of people don't know, they leave the negative off or they don't bring it with you. All that area, all this right here is multiplication. You're just putting it all together. That includes the negative sign. Okay, so please be careful of that. Okay, now I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so I have more room to work. Now at this point, okay, now we're going to continue doing the work under the radical. So x equals 2 plus or minus. Now 4 plus 12 is going to be 16, all divided by 2. Now here's where your calculator is going to come in. Okay, we are now going to evaluate the square root of 16. Now most of you probably already know the square root of 16 is 4. So 2 plus or minus, that's going to turn into a 4, all divided by 2. Okay, now here's where it confuses some students sometimes as well. This plus or minus symbol takes into account the both positive and negative solutions you get when you take a square root. Explaining here, let me explain. If I take positive 4 and square it, most of you will say, gee, that's easy, that's positive 16. But here's the trick. If I take negative 4 and square it, that is also positive 16. Okay? So what the plus or minus symbol does, what the plus or minus symbol does here is it takes into account you could have the positive 4 or negative 4 and still get positive 16 as a solution under the radical. Okay? So because of that, we have to worry about the positive and negative solution sets that we get from this. So we're going to do two solution sets. We start with the x positive. So I'm going to pretend to start that this symbol was a plus, not plus or minus, just a plus. So you would have 2 plus 4 divided by 2. Well, 2 plus 4 is 6 divided by 2, which is just 3. So there's one answer we get. Okay. Now we have to worry about the x negative. So assuming that this plus or minus symbol really was a minus sign. So we would have 2 minus 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2 divided by 2, or negative 1. Oops. Come on. There we go. So therefore, we would say x is equal to the positive 3 from the first one and negative 1 from the second. And there's your solution set. Now, one thing I want to make clear. Just because this is x positive does not mean your answer has to be positive. You can have two negatives as a solution. So a lot of students get that confused sometimes. They say, well, gee, this is x positive, so shouldn't this be a positive answer over here? No, not always. Just same like this. Just because this is x negative does not mean this answer has to be negative. Okay, so just be very cautious with that. Don't fall into that little trap. Okay? All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so let's take a look at this one. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, does one side of this equation equal to 0? The answer is yes. So now we're going to do our ABCs. Okay, so the 1 in front of the x squared is my A. Okay, the 9 in front of the x is B. And the 5 in front of the 5 by itself is just your C. All right, so let's substitute. X equals negative B. So if I do a negative of positive 9, that's negative 9. Plus or minus radical B squared. So 9 squared, you can either write 9 and then squared, or I just do the math out here. 9 squared is 81. Minus 4 times my A value, which is 1. Whoops. Times my C value, which is 5. All divided by 2 times your A value, which is 1. Okay. So now we're going to work again under the radical. And again, since I did this part already, my focus is going to be doing the -4 times a times c. So x equals -9 plus or minus radical 81. Now -4 times 1 is -4. -4 times 5 is -20. All divided by, now 2 times 1 is 2. All right, now at this point, we still have to do the work under the radical here. So x equals -9 plus or minus radical. That's going to be 81 minus 20 is 61. All divided by 2. Shrink this down. Now here's where your calculator comes in, because if you're thinking about this, oh geez, square root of 61, I'm not really sure what that is, because it doesn't come out nice. That's why you're not sure. Okay, so here we go. So on your calculator, we are going to do the square root of 61. I'm going to round that answer to 2 decimal places. So x equals to -9 plus or minus. It's going to become 7.81, because I get 7.81024, blah, 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 blah. We only need 2 decimal places, all divided by 2. Okay. So now at this point, now we're going to do our positive and negative solution sets. So start with the x positive. So again, we're going to pretend that the plus or minus only has a plus. So it's -9 plus 7.81 divided by 2. Now when we do this, again, we're going to do just the top first. So we're going to do -9 plus 7.81, hit equals. I get -1.19 divided by 2. So I take -1.19, divide that by 2. I get -0.595. Okay. Now normally with me, I know the thing says round to 2 decimal places, but usually I say if it stops after 3, I would keep it. But again, technically, if the directions say round to 2 places, you would have -0.60. Okay, because the 5 would say to round up. Okay. Now, let's do the negative side of this. So the x negative says we're going to do -9 minus 7.81 divided by 2. All right, I got to scooch this. I'm going to got a room here. Whoop. Okay. So on our calculators, -9 minus 7.81 gives me a grand total of -16.81 divided by 2. So we're going to divide that answer by 2. I'm going to bring the answer down here. We're going to have -8.405. Now, like I said, I normally keep this if it's 3, but if the directions say to round, we're going to send that up to -8.41. Okay, so my solution set, x is equal to -0.6 or 0.60 and -8.41. So, like I said in the previous slide, just because the x positive was positive does not mean your answer has to be. So don't fall into that trap. Okay? All right, let's look at the next one. All right, so something like this. Okay? All right, so here we go. So first thing we do, does one side of this thing equal to 0? Yes, it does. So I can start grabbing my A's, B's, and C's. So the 1 is going to be my A. The -12 is going to be my B. And the 36 positive is going to be my C. Okay. So now let's substitute in. Thank you for the blocks. All right, X. You want this apart? Okay, here you go. X equals, okay, negative B. So negative 12 is positive 12. Plus or minus radical B squared. Negative 12 squared is positive 144. Okay. Minus 4 times my A value, which is 1, times my C value, which is 36. All divided by 2A, or 2 times 1. Okay. So now at this point, we're going to do the math under the radical. X equals 12 plus or minus radical 144. Okay. And we're going to do this math right here, the negative 4 times 1 times 36. So when you do that, negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 36 is negative 144, divided by, and 2 times 1 is 2. All right, let's do the math under the radical. X equals 12 plus or minus radical 0, all divided by 2. Now again, this is where, I'm going to scooch this, some students start to freak out because they say, well, gee, radical 0, that's no solution. I can't do this. But there is a solution. If you want to think about this the traditional way, what number times itself gives you 0 would be 0. 0 times 0 is still 0. So, we can, or if you do it on your calculator, the square root of 0 is 0. Okay? So, x equals 12 plus or minus 0 divided by 2. All right, so let's go to our x positive and x negative. Oops, hey, I hate it when it does that. So my x positive says we're going to do 12 plus 0 divided by 2. Okay, well, 12 plus 0 on the top is just going to be 12 divided by 2, which is 6. Okay, the x negative says 12 minus 0 divided by 2. Well, again, 12 minus 0 is 12 divided by 2, which is, again, 6. Now, like I tried to tell you in one of the earlier slides, just because the x negative we're doing does not mean your answer's negative. Okay, so to do this out, our final answer, you can write this two ways. X could be 6 and 6. That's one way you can write this. The other way to write it is to say x is equal to 6. It's kind of a newer way to write this. Or kind of the traditional way to write something like this is x is equal to 6, and we would put dr underneath this, indicating double root, because the answer value of 6 appeared twice. All right, so again, either way you write this would be acceptable. Okay. All right, so let's move on. All right, let's take a look at this next one. Oh boy, we got a negative in front of the x. Now remember, when it came to factoring, we said you can't have a negative in front of the square. So you'd have to factor out a GCF of -1 and all that fun stuff. The nice thing about quadratic formula is you don't have to worry about the negative in front of the x squared. It can be negative, it can be positive, doesn't matter, because you're just going to plug it into the formula and go. All right, so let's get started. Let's deal with what we do have to worry about. Does one side of this equation equal 0? And the answer is yes. So now let's label up our a's, b's, and c's. So -1 is going to be my a. My b value is going to be +4. My c value is going to be +12. Okay, so now we just fill in. X equals -b. Hey, Gwen. So negative +4 is going to be negative 4.
Over here.
Plus or minus radical.
Here.
I'm doing my work. Now b squared, 4 squared is going to be 16. Minus 4 times my a value, which is negative 1 this time, times my c value of 12, all divided by 2 times negative 1. Okay? All right, so now that we have this, now let's start doing the work under the radical. Again, my focus is going to be right here. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus radical 16. Now negative 4 times negative 1 is 4. And 4 times 12 is going to be positive 48. Divided by negative 2. Careful. Alright, I'm going to shrink this. Now I'm going to continue the work under the radical here. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus radical. Now 16 and 48 is going to be 64. Oh, shoot. Okay. Bless you. All divided by negative 2. I gotta scooch this again. So, hey, shoot. So, you know what? This is gonna come. Shrink this can go here, and this can go right here. Okay, so now let's evaluate. But again, we all know the square root of 64 is 8. So negative 4 plus or minus 8, all divided by negative 2. Doing some math. Okay, so now let's do our positive and negative solution set. So the x positive says we're going to do negative 4 plus 8 divided by negative 2. So negative 4 plus 8 is going to be 4 divided by negative 2, which is negative 2. Okay. My x negative says we're going to do negative 4 minus 8 divided by negative 2. So negative 4 minus 8 is negative 12 divided by negative 2, which is going to be 6. So my solution set, x is going to equal to negative 2 and 6. See? Pretty simple. All right, now we got a bit of an issue with this one. Okay. So now notice how, well, let's start with our standard checklist. Does one side equal 0? Yes. Now students looking at this, since we've gone through the factoring unit, go, well, I can take out a GCF of 2 on that. You could, but again, remember, it's really not all that necessary. Okay? But you can if you want to. Okay? So, I'm going to keep this in for now. And again, I think one of my other slides I can show you where it does not. But, all right, so let's get started here. But notice, we got a problem. We've only got 2 pieces. To use the quadratic formula, we need 3 because you need the ax squared, the bx, and the c. So what you're going to do is we are going to replace the missing b value with a 0, just like we did before when we were factoring trinomials and we had something like this happen. Okay, so I can fill in the missing gap with a 0. All right, so now at this point, now let's grab our ABCs. So here's my A is the 2. My B is going to be the 0. My C is going to be the negative 18. Okay, so now let's get started. So let's fill in what we know. X equals negative B. So that's going to be 0. Plus or minus radical B squared. 0 squared is 0. Minus 4 times my A value, which is 2, times your C value, which is negative 18, all divided by 2A. 2 times 2. All right, so here we go. X equals 0 plus or minus radical, square root of 0 is 0. Now negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times 18 is going to be 144. It's going to be positive. Divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Let's shrink this. Alright, so now, let's do up the math. I'm going to still work under here. X equals 144 divided by 4. Okay. Whoops. Now let's evaluate this. X equals, good for you, 12 divided by 4. And now let's get our positive and negatives. X positive says 0 plus 12 divided by 4, which is going to be 12 over 4, or 3. The X negative says 0 minus 12 divided by 4, which is negative 12 divided by 4, which is negative 3. Okay, so therefore our solution set X, X is equal to 3 and negative 3. All right, so there's that one. All right, let's take a look at this next one. All right, now again, we've got a lot more work here. All right, so first things first. Does one side of this thing equal to 0? The answer is yes. So now we can go get our A's, B's, and C's. So the negative 2 is my A. Now since I can't see the number here, there's a 1 here, so the negative 1 is my B. And negative 3 is my C. Okay. You love the cake? Well, that's good. All right, so here you go. X is equal to negative B. So negative 1 is positive 1. Plus or minus radical B squared. Negative 1 squared is 1. Minus 4 times your A value, which is negative 2, times your C value, which is negative 3. All divided by 2 times your A value, which is negative 2. Okay. So X is equal to 1 plus or minus radical 1. Now we're going to do this math here. So negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Correction, that's positive 8. I'm sorry. Negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. Positive 8 times negative 3 is negative 24, divided by negative 4. Now we're going to do the math here. X is equal to 1 plus or minus radical negative 23, all divided by negative 4. Now, here's where you're going to have your problem. If you type negative 23 into the calculator and hit equals, you're going to get an error message because of this. We cannot have negative numbers under the radical, under an even index radical, let me refrain, and have it work out nicely. This creates what's called an imaginary root because no number times itself, even if it's negative, gives you a negative number. Remember when we were talking about this earlier. So if I took any number times itself, let's say 4, as we saw earlier. 4 times 4 we all know is positive 16 because that's 4 squared. If I take negative 4 and square it, that means we're going to do negative 4 times negative 4, which again gives me positive 16. Okay? You'll learn in Algebra 2 that this negative eventually is going to be dealt with using a letter called I, which indicates imaginary root. But for an Algebra 1 course right now, we're not going to be interested in that. So when you get something like this right now under the radical, we're going to declare this as no solution. Now again, if you're an Algebra 2 student watching this, what would happen is this would come, we kick out the I, so you'd have 1 plus or minus I radical 23 all over negative 4, and then you'd take it from there. Okay, so for Algebra 1, right now, you would declare this. If you're an Algebra 2 student watching this, you're probably going into the realm of imaginaries. So just be aware of that, okay? All right, so let's keep going. All right, let's take a look at this monster. All right, so first things first. Does one side of this thing equal to 0? The answer is yes. So let's go get our A's, B's, and C's. So positive 5 is my A. Positive 4 is my B. Negative 7 is my C. Okay, so X equals negative B. So negative positive 4 is negative 4. Plus or minus radical B squared. 4 squared is 16. Minus 4 times my A value, which is 5, times my C value, which is negative 7, all divided by 2A, or 2 times 5. Okay, so now we're going to do the math under the radical. X equals negative 4 plus or minus radical 16. Now negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. Negative 20 times negative 7 is positive 140, all divided by 10. Okay, so now let's evaluate the radical some more. X equals negative 4 plus or minus radical 156 divided by 10. Okay, I'm going to shrink this down. Oops, it's separated a little bit here. Okay, so now on the calculator, I'm going to type in square root 156. And we get 12.489996, so I'm going to round. X equals negative 4 plus or minus, it's going to be 12.49 divided by 10. Okay, so now let's do our positive and negative solution sets. X positive says negative 4 plus 12.49 divided by 10. So negative 4 plus 12.49 equals, I get 8.49 divided by 10, which is going to be 0.849, which rounds to approximately 8.5. All right, let's do the x negative. So we're going to have negative 4 minus 12.49 divided by 10, which is going to be, when I do the math out, negative 16.49 divided by 10. Okay, and now finishing it up, divide by 10, I get negative 1.649, which I will round to negative 1.65. So my solution set, x is equal to 0.85 and negative 1.65. There it is. All right, let's take a look at this one. All right, so first things first. Does one side of the equation equal 0? Yes, it does. If it doesn't, you need to move pieces around. Okay, so let's label our A's, B's, and C's. So here's your A. Here's your B. Here's your C. Okay, so let's set up our equation. X is equal to negative B, so negative positive 7 is negative 7. plus or minus radical b squared. 7 squared is 49. Okay. Minus 4 times a, which is negative 4, times your c value, which is 8, all divided by 2a, or 2 times negative 4. Alright, so let's start doing the math. X equals negative 7 plus or minus radical 49. Now, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. 16 times 8 should be 144. That's 128, sorry. All divided by negative 8. All right. Shrink this. All right, so now let's do the math under the radicals. So I'm going to add the 49 to the 128. So x equals to negative 7 plus or minus radical 177, all divided by negative 8. Okay. You love cake, yeah? Most people do.
Yummy.
It's so yummy, huh? X is equal to negative 7 plus or minus. So let's do the square root of 177 on our calculators. Oops. You get 13.304 and some change, so it'll be 13.30 divided by negative 8. Well, let's shrink this down again. Oh, separate it again. Oh, scooch it over here and move it over here. All right, so let's do our x positive. It says negative 7 plus 13.30 divided by negative 8. Okay. So now we have, so we're going to take negative 7 plus 13.3, whoops. I get 6.3 divided by negative 8. So divide that by negative 8. I get negative 0.7875. That's a 7, by the way. So rounding to 2 places, I'm going to say this is approximately negative 0.79. All right, let's do the x negative. So let's do negative 7 minus 13.30 divided by negative 8. So when I put this together on the top, I'm going to have negative 20.30 divided by negative 8. Okay, so I divide that out. I get positive 2.5375. So rounding to 2 places, that's going to be 2.54. So my final answer set, x is going to equal to negative 0.79 and 2.54. And there it is. Alright folks, that's the end of this video. Hopefully you learned a lot, and I will see you in the next video.